Yay!
So hi everyone, my name is Sebastian.
My name's Oliver.
We both work on the Chrome extensions developer relations team. And tonight we're going to be talking about Chrome extensions and why they work really well with AI. But before we dive into the AI part, we want to quickly give you an introduction to Chrome extensions, because as we've just seen, when Rob earlier asked who has already built an extension, no, almost no one, but almost everyone is using an extension, and that was the same for me. Actually, I joined the team 2 years ago, and I joined the team without ever having built an extension, and so everything was fairly new to me, and Oliver was already in the team, and Oliver has been building extensions forever. And so first time we've been meeting. Basically, we've been chatting, and we found out that we've been using the same key lights in our setup. I don't know. So basically, I work from home, so this is my desk, and so that I don't look so tired doing meetings, I've got these lights. So they make me appear a little bit less tired. And I love them. They're really great. The only annoying thing about them is I have to switch them on when I'm starting a meeting. And they're really bright. So when I stop the meeting, I should switch them off. And I'm a really lazy person. So actually this when they're on. And I was, Oliver, when I was talking to Oliver, like we discovered we've been using the same key lights, and I told him, I love them, but it's super annoying because I always forget them to switch them off. Then I get blinded by them, and he was like, I wrote an extension that automatically switches on these lights when I'm joining meeting, when I leave the meeting is over, they're automatically going to be switched off. And honestly, that blew my mind, because that was really solving a problem I was really struggling with, and he said it was super simple to implement. And why don't you want to quickly tell folks how this extension worked?
I can give you all a sort of whirlwind tour, show you how this is built. I think, yes. One thing I want to start by saying is that you can build an extension with just HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. So you don't need to learn any brand new technologies. If you're building websites, then you have all of the tools that you need to build something like this. So I'll show you some of the code. First of all, I have a directory for the extension, and there's just 2 files inside of there. One file is manifest.json, and this is sort of a metadata file that has some basic information about your extension, and sort of tells the browser what the extension should do and how it should work. And then we also have this serviceworker.js file, which is where our implementation actually lives. If you're familiar with service workers on the web, it's very similar. If you're not, then don't worry about it. Just see it as another JavaScript file where your code is running. The specifics aren't important. So we start by looking at this manifest.json file. It's just a JSON file. It has some important keys that we can quickly talk through. So some of them you can probably guess what they do. We have the manifest version. This is the version of the extensions platform that you're building on top of. So in this case, manifest version 3, which is the latest version of the platform. We also have this service worker key, which is just telling the browser where to find that file that has all of our code in it. So in this case, that's the serviceworker.js file. And then we also have some host permissions, which is sites that our extension is allowed to talk to. So the way I'm actually controlling these lights is I discovered they just have an HTTP API, and you can send a post request to that API and update the state of the lights. So I have permissions to go to that one particular endpoint that I need. And then there are also some permissions. So this is just sort of talking about the capabilities that my extension has. I think
that's actually like really important part of extensions, like because they have access to maybe some sensitive data, like they can read actually content from websites that you're looking at. So basically, that's why extensions have to explicitly declare everything that they intend to do, so that the user is aware of, okay, this extension is actually trying to read content or is trying to access the browser history. So end users can also revoke these permissions. So it's a really important mechanism in the extensions world.
Yeah, thank you for calling that out. I think that's a really useful thing to know. And whenever you're trying to build an extension, you should always try and think about what's the smallest set of permissions that I can request, because the more permissions you request, the more you're asking your users to consent to. So we've seen the manifest file. Let's take a quick look at the service worker file. So at the top, I just declare a variable, and this is just somewhere to store the ID of the last tab where I saw Google Meet open. And that's useful so that when that tab closes, I know that I can turn the lights off now because the tab that I had the lights on for is no longer there. And then I have this specific event listener, which is using an extension-specific event. So this is using the chrome.tabs.onUpdated event. And this is fired whenever a tab is updated. So something changes, like the title of the tab or the URL that you're on. And so I can actually do a check and ask, does the title include this Google Meet prefix? And I know that whenever I join a meeting, the title of the page has this specific prefix. So that's something that I can look for. And then if it does, then if we don't already have a Meet tab open, then I just turn my lights on. And that set light state function is just making an API request to turn the lights on. I can also update that last known tab ID just so we're tracking it. Otherwise, if the tab was updated and it's no longer a Google Meet tab, so that title has changed, I've navigated to a different site, then I can just turn my lights off. And that's really all there is to this. So you only need these two files, some really simple code, and you've built your first extension to have this functionality. So I really like this bit about extensions, that you can find a personal problem that you have and build a really quick solution to sort of hack something together. And now this is running in my browser and sort of helping me day to day. And it still feels like magic when I sort of forget that I have this running. I join a meeting and my lights come on and I get excited and I realize, oh, I built that. Like this is something that I made and it's still working and doing that for me. I'll just quickly show you how you could load that. So if you'd built that extension, you can go to this special Chrome://extensions page. You can enable developer mode in the top right, press load unpacked, and then you just get a directory browser where you can navigate to that directory where your source files are and load the extension. And you can see the extension loaded there. Cool. So I want to pass it back to you now, Sebastian.
Yeah, thanks. So, and yeah, as I said earlier, this really blew my mind. And I think it's really, as Oliver said, it's really about something that you can quickly throw together to solve a problem that you have. You don't have to build a big product. You don't have to write nice code or anything. You don't have to publish it to the web store in order to be able to use it. But speaking of web store, in 2023, we saw like a massive increase, like a double increase in new web store submissions. And I mean, who wants to guess what the reason was for this? I mean, it was obviously like ChatGPT coming up and all the other big LLMs, and people realized that you can build really interesting products when using extensions together with AI, and that's definitely something that we've seen as well, and that's something that we want to talk a little bit more, like kind of like, what is the potential, or why do so many people think that they can build great experiences by combining extensions with AI? And actually, before we want to dive into use case, we want to quickly talk about why extensions are such a great match for this. So the first thing that extensions can do is that they can observe and monitor the Chrome browser. So extensions have special APIs that only extensions can access. And with these APIs, for example, you can access bookmarks. So you can imagine like using an LLM to develop a better way to search for bookmarks. Or you can access like downloads, browser history. Like you can do really interesting things, like by, for example, implementing something that you can ask, okay, what was the name of the city that I was looking for 2 weeks ago, or the hotel in Madrid that I was looking for 2 weeks ago. So really interesting applications that you can do. Of course, you can organize tabs. You can access the top sites users are browsing and arrange windows. So a lot of potential for enriching functionality by accessing information in the browser.
And similarly, you can also monitor and observe the web. So the examples that Sebastian just gave were looking at browser-specific features or data that the browser has. But you can also sort of step outside of a single website and see everything that's going on across all of the websites that a user's looking at. So you can look at the Active tab and ask, what's the user doing right now? What are they looking for? What are they searching for? And use all of this as context for your extension. You can use the desktop capture and page capture and tab capture APIs to actually capture a recording of what the user's doing on the page and then maybe send that to a multimodal model to ask it to look at the video and maybe get some insight from what the user's doing. So this is really nice to sort of get more context that you can use to build your product.
And finally, like kind of like the third big thing that you can do is you can customize the browser interface. So you can, for example, implement an action button. That's kind of like the extension button that you have in the top toolbar. So you can use it to trigger an action with your extension. You can add something to the context menu. You can listen to keystrokes. You can add something to the context menu and open separate pages, pop-ups. Also, something that we've seen being used a lot in an AI context is a new side panel. So basically, it's a great way, and you see it in the screenshot here, it's a great way to provide additional information, for example, that's relevant to the website that the user is currently looking at.
I think the thing that really made this click for me is for product design in general, both software and outside of software, you always need to think about what are the inputs for the user and what are the outputs. And a browser is such a perfect place to have so many inputs because you have all of these APIs that give you data, and then you have all of these interesting outputs, all of these different surfaces that you can show content on that aren't available to just websites, but if you build an extension, you have access to.
Yeah, and I think there's so much potential here by using all these APIs to kind of like customize the browsing experiences to the user's need. And not only the browsing experiences, but also kind of like the browser itself. I think there's really a lot of potential here. And now that we've quickly talked about kind of like what APIs extensions provide and how you could potentially use them together with AI, let's quickly talk about how you can use AI.
Yeah, so I think if you were to try and think of what's the first way or the first path I might go down to use AI on the web, APIs is maybe quite an obvious one that you might come to. So that's definitely an option. You can call out to a third-party API that's hosting a large model, and you can directly invoke that and get a response. And that's very similar to just how you'd invoke any other API. There are SDKs that can help you with this. So this is one of the SDKs that we have for interacting with Gemini. And there are a few benefits with this approach. First of all, it's really easy to learn. If you've ever called an API or used a library before, then you have all of the skills to do this. You can access the most powerful models. So even multimodal models are available. And with some of the built-in APIs right now, that's mostly text-based. But with these server-side models, we can do a lot more. And there's also really low resource usage for your users. So if you're working on resource-constrained devices or your users might be using a device that can't run a model itself, then you don't need to worry about that because none of the AI is actually happening in the browser. It's just happening externally. But despite this being one option, and I think a pretty good option, there are definitely other options as well.
Yeah, and the other option we've already seen, and Tom already provided an excellent introduction into Chrome's built-in APIs. And these are also, of course, available to Chrome extensions as well. And in particular, kind of like we are soon going to be starting origin trials for some of these APIs. So until now, they are in preview. So basically, they require a flag in order to be able to try these APIs out. But with the origin trials, you will be able to actually ship a website or an extension to users. And like the language detection API, the origin trial is already available. The prompt API and the summarize APIs are going to be launching soon as origin trials. And about the prompt API, there's one really interesting bit. This is going to be extensions only for now. So basically, you will only be able to use the origin trial when using the API directly from an extension. And the other one, the write and the rewrite and the translate APIs are for now going to be staying in the preview because we need to spend a little bit more time working on them.
And something which I think is really great here is this isn't just the web APIs and they happen to be available in extensions, but we actually have a lot of close collaboration between the extensions team and the teams building these built-in APIs to make sure that extensions are a really great place for them to work and that they fit right into how you would expect to be able to use them in extensions.
Yeah. And like the screenshot here, this is a simple sample extension that we published. What it does is basically it looks at the current page that you're looking at in the browser, and it will extract the main text from the page, and it will generate a summary for you. And I think this is just like a really trivial example for what we can do, but I think it's a good example for how these different APIs play together. So the Chrome extension injects the content script will extract the main text from the page, will send it back to the extension, and then the extension will call the Summarize API and display the result in the side panel beside the main page. So this is kind of like all the different parts playing together. And also really interesting, we've recently launched the Google Built-in AI Challenge. So that's kind of like a contest to build really cool extensions or web pages with these built-in APIs. And I think the challenge started early October, was mid-October? In October, and it goes until end of the year. And kind of like the winner gets a prize of like, I think $12,000. So I think that's actually like a nice sum. So if you're interested in exploring these APIs, we definitely would recommend you to join the challenge. I definitely think it's going to be fun. So yeah, take a look.
Okay, there's one more way to use AI in extensions that I want to make sure that we don't forget.
Yes, totally, yes. And that way is custom models.
Yes, so I think right now LLMs are the part of AI that everybody is excited about. And like they're really cool. They can do some amazing things. I think everyone is surprised at quite how far we've come so quickly. But there are also more traditional machine learning models, which can be really great for more specific use cases. So, for example, Patrick, who's also on our team, built this really cool extension that will show you the sentiment of the email that you're typing. So as you're typing your email, at the moment, he's sort of neutral or maybe excited, so you can see his face there. If he was to continue and start typing, I'm very angry and I'm upset, then you would see his facial expression change. And for this, all we need to do is take some text and get the general sentiment from it. Is he happy or sad or angry? And for this, you don't actually need a large language model. A large language model might be able to do this, but that's quite a heavy thing to bring onto the user's device. And you can actually get much smaller models that can do the same thing. So you can see Hugging Face here, and they have a library called Transformers.js. And this has some very small models that you can download and bundle directly into your extension to have functionality like this. So I think what I'd say is that if you're interested in AI, then by all means, check out all of the latest things that are happening, but also explore the full space and see if there might be other options that you can use for your use case that have some benefits you might not have thought about.
So kind of like what we've seen so far is aim to how to build an extension, and then kind of like why extensions are potentially a great platform for using AI and how to use AI in extension. But another really interesting is kind of like why build an extension with AI, and then we've been looking in this space like for almost 1.5 years now, and kind of we've seen a few patterns that where we've seen like where the combination of both makes a lot of sense, and the first one is prototyping new features. For example, that's something that we do on our own. So for example, at Google or also in the Chrome team, we use Chrome extensions to explore new Chrome features. So this is an example from a team that looks into how we can use AI to improve copy pasting. And they built a prototype in which you can, for example, select text on a page and then use this text to create a calendar event. In this example, we have a page from a concert, and you just select the important dates in the description, and then you simply click Create Event, and it will automatically create a Google Calendar entry from this. So, and I think the interesting part here is where the model is used to kind of like take this arbitrary text and extract the relevant information that is important for creating a calendar event. And this could definitely be a Chrome feature, not specifically this, but in general, Chrome could be more helpful in kind of like copy-pasting text between forms and web pages. So, and this is the Chrome team using extensions as a really quick way to explore these features. So you don't have to actually build a proper feature into Chrome, which can take some time. So it's often cases much easier to integrate, like to just play around this, and extensions are really great platform for this.
I tell you what stands out to me here, though, is in this case we were using this for prototyping, and maybe one day this will be made into an actual Chrome feature. But there's no reason this couldn't be a product in itself, like something that the Google Calendar team publishes, for example.
Yeah, that's really good. So because that's the second big use case that we've seen is kind of like supercharging existing products. So the Google Calendar team could build an extension in addition to the main calendar product that provides features such as like better copy pasting and making it easier to create new events from existing web page content. And I think like the big example for this is Pinterest, the Pinterest Chrome extension, which allows you to kind of like pin arbitrary images from web pages and add them to your to Pinterest. So I think again this is a really good example for when extensions can make a lot of sense.
I think one other place where extensions can be useful is meeting users where they're at in the products that they're already in. So in this example, you can see an example of sort of a large enterprise application that maybe you might be hosting in your enterprise. And perhaps there's a feature that you want to add to this, maybe a feature that uses some AI capabilities, but this might be a really large application, it might be expensive to update, or maybe it's quite an old application and nobody knows how it works or what to touch and they don't want to break anything. So how do you go about adding functionality to this? Well, a really great way is to build an extension, because an extension can run in the browser, it can access everything that's going on and interact with the web page, but it is still separate to that application. So you don't need to worry about updating that specific application. You can just build on top of it. This screenshot that you're seeing is from a product called 8Flow. And the idea behind 8Flow is that they analyze what employees are doing to see if there's repetitive workflows, if they're constantly going through the same steps, maybe filling out the same fields. And then they actually automatically generate these workflows that will go ahead and do that in the future, so that you don't have to go through those same steps manually every time.
Yeah, it's also, we've been running kind of like a preview program for the built-in APIs with different companies, and one company had very similar use case. Basically, they've been using Salesforce to kind of like track their different customers, and they built an extension to better prepare the call agents before making a call to a customer. And this extension would kind of like extract the information from Salesforce and generate a custom summary that was specifically targeted towards their products. And that was specifically targeted for the customer. And for them, it means they could greatly kind of like reduce the time which their call agents needed to prepare for a call. And that is an example, like Salesforce would never build such a feature for them because they are way too small. But using extensions, they've been able to kind of like customize Salesforce to their needs and make their call agents work much more effortlessly. Yeah, but that's pretty much it. Like we've talked quite a bit about Chrome extensions, how we build them, and what they can do, and why they're fantastic match for AI. And if you want to learn more, check out the link on the slide. And I don't know, have we got time for questions, or should we have pizza?
I'm supportive either way.
Is it possible to use the AI for analytics purposes? Like, for example, detecting bots depending on how they move their mouse?
So
I mean, the small language model. So
that's a good question. There are lots of different models available. I think within the Transformers.js library, there's sort of a whole list that you can go through of different models that they make available, different sample code for different use cases. I haven't looked to see if there's one specifically for that, but it seems like something that would be possible. So I definitely encourage you to take a look.
But I don't think that any of the built-in models would be able to handle input which is not text, as in this case.
So you may want to look into a thing called anomaly detection. It basically is a train a model with the way you expect regular users to behave, and anomaly detection will tell you when a user is behaving in a way that is not the way that is expected. So kind of outside the kind of the normal of what a user would do. But you will likely have to train your own model for this.
I don't know if we've introduced you yet. So this is Andre, who works at Google on these AI APIs. And he's a super useful person to talk to for any of these questions.
I have one question. And what about to create an extension for end-to-end tests on our website? I mean, I always face this test, and it's struggle because we need to use other libraries. But I'm thinking, what about that? And what about using AI to summarize this test and give me some feedback? Is that possible?
Yeah, I have a couple of thoughts. I don't know if you have anything.
I've thought as well. You start.
Okay, I can start. So first of all, I think testing is a really great use case for extensions. So I've seen some interesting examples of that sort of thing in the past. I know Selenium, which is like a popular testing framework, they have an extension called Selenium IDE. And the idea behind that is it sort of helps you set up steps in your test by going through a website and then marking particular elements. Actually, I think even within DevTools, we have built-in support for creating a puppeteer test and adding steps and then doing an export. So there's definitely lots of prior art there. I've also seen lots of sort of independent of extensions, interesting ideas around how we can use AI to make testing better, like maybe automatically generating selectors for elements. But that's not something I've looked into too much. So I think it's a super interesting space, but I can't speak too much to it.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, there's one caveat here, and that depends a little bit on what kind of model you're using. But in general, like I like my tests to be deterministic. And so depending on how you use them, it's using an LLM might not be the best match, because like one of the things that they sometimes struggle with is being deterministic. So kind of like that's, so for things like recognizing patterns, models could work really well, like to maybe make my tests more robust, for example. But for other things, I'm not sure if that they would be a good match, but that's very much depends on your specific use case.